from this final session. So before we actually go to the session, so this is actually taken from our module 2. So as you can see here, we are now on week 3. So what are the things that we will anticipate for the coming second to the last and final session for this week? We have, of course, so this coming Wednesday, okay, that's tomorrow, is the schedule for our long test number 2. So as you can see, the coverage and the topics included for long test number 2 is of course quite short. So you can anticipate that you still have more or less the same number of questions, but the questions are more or less about the same topic. So there are multiple questions for the same topic. Okay, I hope that's clear to everyone. And then for session 4, that will be our um, dedicated session for poster making. Okay, so again, poster making, which is our performance task for this quarter. So later on, I will also briefly explain that and of course where you can find the details for our performance task. So actually, we have the same set of objectives as we had yesterday, all about biodiversity and extinction and its relationship towards how certain or the explanation why certain organisms are more susceptible or more likely to go extinct than other organisms. So that will be our focus this afternoon. So this is actually found on our textbook, page 97, specifically species vulnerable to extinction. So we will understand why certain organisms or certain species are more vulnerable than others. Okay, so probably it's because of a certain factor. So take note that I think I already emphasized this yesterday that extinction is not something bad. Extinction is natural. It's part of nature's way to cleanse or purge the planet so that there is an equilibrium, a balance between there is a chance for new organisms to rise or evolve so that it's not extinction is necessary so that it will not the new organisms and the old organisms will not crowd the planet. So it is important and it's necessary. That's why all organisms are destined to become extinct. However, certain organisms will become will be more likely to go extinct faster than other organisms. So that means their rate of extinction varies from one organism to another. Another important thing that we need to take note in relation to um, extinction is that since each species, each organism, we have our own unique sets of characteristics. And these characteristics actually help us cope, survive our environment. Now, of course, it's a different story with the people or with humans because we are very, very adaptive. Wherever we are placed, we can easily change our diet, our lifestyle, if there is actually a need for that change. However, that change is not something very normal or natural for other organisms. Because they have their own set of traits, it can pose a double edged sword for them. It can be considered as a strength and it can also be considered as a weakness that will either help them or hinder them with their ability to adapt. Okay. Another important concept that we need to remember and take into consideration that because of these characteristics and the way of life, it actually more or less um, sketch out or determine whether a certain character or a certain species are prone or vulnerable to extinction. So for us to better understand this concept or these concepts and how they are applied, what we will do is we will watch a very short documentary about the organism, specifically panda. Now, panda is an endemic species, particularly found in certain areas in China. Now, when you talk about endemic, these are the organisms that are specific to one area, and they are very specialized in their diet, meaning their um their behavior or their eating behavior is very specific, and their nutritional requirement is very specific as well. So that's our um the video that we will be watching. So please take note if ever you will encounter disconnection or lag. Always remember the video link of this video is already embedded on our manual, so you can rewatch it during your or you can rewatch it during your most convenient time. So let me change my sharing to sharing tab so that we can include the audio. All right. Okay, by the way, before I start the video, I will be turning off my camera because it's really difficult for me from my end right now. I'm only using data because we don't have very stable internet connection. So please bear in mind I will be deactivating my camera. All right.
The saying, you are what you eat, it's probably the giant panda. Nearly every aspect of a panda's life revolves around bamboo. Giant pandas eat, and eat, and eat. Pandas can spend more than half of each day eating. To understand why pandas eat so much, you need to look more closely at what they eat. Bamboo, a giant woody grass, is a very poor nutritional source, low in protein and high in fiber that pandas can't digest well. Yet, bamboo comprises 99% of a panda's diet. To compensate, pandas need to eat 20 to 40 pounds a day. Pandas have quite a bit in common with carnivores. A panda's digestive system is more closely related to that of a carnivore than an herbivore, which explains why they don't digest plants very well. Fortunately, they have other adaptations that help them chow down on bamboo stalks, including large, powerful jaws. When they're not eating, pandas rest, and poop, and poop. Since they don't digest bamboo very well, pandas end up passing a lot of it as waste, which unsurprisingly contains a lot of undigested bamboo bits. Pandas defecate more than 100 times a day, producing more than 40 pounds of waste. Pandas even go number 2 while they're napping. And they spend a lot of time napping as a way to compensate for their low energy diet. Pandas have tiny cubs because of their poor diet. Baby giant pandas are born blind, helpless, and tiny, weighing just 5 ounces, or about 1,000th the size of their mom. Of all placental mammals, panda cubs are the tiniest in comparison to their mother. Why so small? The mother's diet plays a role. Due to her low metabolism, a panda mother has a relatively low blood oxygen level, so the cub can get more oxygen outside the womb. Pandas' black and white fur may help them camouflage. Once again, we can look at a panda's diet to help understand why its fur is the color it is. Pandas don't store enough fat to hibernate like other bears, so they have to keep eating bamboo all year round. And since they're always roaming in search of bamboo, pandas are unable to shed their fur quickly enough to match their background like other animals can. So their black and white pattern may be sort of a compromise. White fur allows them to blend into snowy backgrounds. Black fur allows them to blend into shady forest backgrounds. Historically, pandas inhabited a much wider range than they do today and faced multiple predators. So at the time, they may have relied more on their camouflage ability. Today, pandas are not at as high a risk from predators, but rather from a loss of bamboo. The good news is that the giant panda's conservation status was recently upgraded from endangered to vulnerable. An estimated 1,850 pandas remain in the wild in China, an increase of 17% over the past decade. However, pandas still face significant threats tied closely to their food source. Human development has driven pandas into isolated, fragmented mountain regions, restricting their access to bamboo. Additionally, climate change threatens to eliminate more than a third of the bamboo habitat that pandas rely on by the end of the century.
Okay, so based on what we just witnessed, based on the data or based on that documentary, what do you think is the primary reason why panda or the population of panda is considered to be more vulnerable to extinction than other organisms? So you may type your answer on the comment section. What you may point out one specific factor or any factors that was mentioned from that video documentary why pandas are more vulnerable to extinction. Okay, so I'll give 2 minutes for those who want to participate and share their answer. You may type them on the comment section. Okay, we have from Miles having a low energy diet. So it was actually mentioned from the video that panda autonomically speaking, meaning based on their structure, they are designed to be carnivorous rather than herbivores. But since they have adapted this mode of eating, wherein they primarily rely on eating bamboos, since bamboo is, of course, rich in fiber rather than fat or protein, there, as a result, the nutrients that, of course, taken in by the panda from the bamboo that they have consumed is actually very low in terms of energy. So it's actually not enough for them to survive. So they have to eat a lot of it for them to really survive or even at least be able to be functional in their daily activities. Yes, thank you, Miles. Anyone else? Anything other factors that was also mentioned from the, yes, Candy, habitat destruction. It was also mentioned during the later part of the video wherein, yes, pandas rely on bamboos. However, because of human intervention, some bamboo habitats or bamboo areas are, of course, utilized or converted to other forms of land. Either they are utilized from forest land to private properties. So, of course, lesser bamboos available on the wild or on the ecosystem where the pandas are living, that means they are more or less competing from a limited source of their food. Thank you for that, Candy. Anyone else? You have one more. So aside from the food, um, aside from the food and of course their habitat, probably this was also mentioned that um, pandas can actually only give birth to one cub at a time. And actually, their cub is very, very weak at birth. So that means a panda cub is actually high risk in terms of what you call this infant vitality, or meaning dali ra siya mamatay, or a young can is more prone to um, experience death or will die because of their characteristics that they are dependent and they are weak at birth. All right. So let's continue. So this means that, as I've mentioned a while ago, certain inherent or natural characteristics that is part of the organism will actually drive them to become more vulnerable to extinction. So after this slide, we will highlight or we will go through these characteristics that actually drive certain organisms to extinction. Number one is we have the low rate reproduction. Of course, probably this is easy for us to understand that certain organisms have lower chance of producing offspring. So, example, humans, we can only produce one offspring every 9 months, and it's not ideal for a human to give birth every year because that's not healthy. At the same time, it's not practical. Of course, if you have a lifespan of, let us say, 45 or 50, and since 25 years old nanganak na ka, it's not practical in terms of the economical aspect. At the same time, it's not also healthy for the mother to give birth every year. So dapat naag yung interval. So we're talking about humans. But if you compare that to cockroaches or rats or rabbits or other organisms that actually produce multiple births or multiple offspring in one pregnancy. So, of course, that means if an organism produce more members of the community or more members of the population, then it actually lowers the risk of the population going extinct because there are a lot of representatives or members. But if at the start, a certain organism already requires more care sa young. At the same time, they can only produce low number of organisms or low number of offspring per pregnancy, then that's also another factor. So here we have, as it was mentioned a while ago, that the fertility of the panda is very specific. It's actually a very short amount of time. So meaning, it, it's not an assurance that every time but a panda is fertile, it will actually result to pregnancy. At the same time, it was also mentioned that young pandas at birth are actually very weak. So again, they are more susceptible of dying during infancy rather than reaching full adulthood. And then we have here specialized niche. So here it talks about that certain organisms or certain species, they have a very well defined narrow specific a narrow specific biological or physical or chemical requirements for survival. So example with the panda. So it's very specific that their food or diet is dependent on the bamboo. Almost 99% of their diet is limited only to bamboo. Therefore, this means that there's no alternative for that. Meaning they will go hungry rather than eat other forms of food. So that means they have a very specific diet. Or it can also be about the habitat or the requirements where they are living. So example, in the Philippines, we have a lot of bamboo. So ideal unta ang panda to be raised here in the Philippines. However, when you talk about the biological aspect, let us say the chemical aspect we're in China where they are naturally living, it's cold, right? It's not a tropical country. Compare that to the Philippines, it's not ideal because pandas are covered with thick fur. So they will not die with hunger, but they will die because of heat stroke or too much exposure to heat because their bodies are not built for the tropical condition. Okay, so that's one. Another here is a narrow distribution. So what do we mean? Sometimes certain populations are designed to be in a group, like a herd, a pride, a pack, unsa pa man, a school of fish, let's say. So certain organisms, they actually tend to go in groups. There's always an alpha in a group wherein this alpha acts as the leader. Now, when the population or a group is actually very small compared to other organisms, they are actually more susceptible to become extinct because they can easily be wiped out. Either, let us say, they are ambushed by their predator. If there are a lot of predators compared to the number of members in the population, they can easily be outnumbered and, of course, slayed. All the members will be eaten or killed. So, same thing with people, di ba? Sometimes, if there is conflict, if you have if you are outnumbered, and at the same time you don't have the artillery to defend your territory, then of course, so it's actually one of the problems sa Philippines, because we don't have the technology, the resources to really protect our sovereignty. So that's one. So that's another aspect. But more or less, it's the same reason, wherein if you have a small number of population, and this population is not properly geared or trained to protect themselves, then they can be easily wiped out. So here's an example of a tamaraw, um, Mindoro Tamaraw, wherein they were limited in terms of their number, and when they were poached or they were targeted by hunting, eventually it was easier for the population to go down, because in the first place they are already limited, or there are only few members or representative for the population, and the amount or the number of organisms that are being hunted or poached is actually higher. So it's not there's no balance between the new members and then the number of members that are being hunted or killed for human consumption, or anything else. And then we have here feeds at a high trophic level. So it depends also where you are situated or located in the food pyramid. Now, of course, if you are lower in the food pyramid, it means that there are multiple animals or organisms that will um, treat you as a prey, 'di ba? So meaning you are more there is a higher risk that you will be eaten by other organisms, because there are multiple predators that are, of course, um wanting you to be eaten, or to want them they want you to be consumed. Now, on the other hand, so we talk about it in the context of humans, we are on top of the food chain. We don't actually have a direct predator. So meaning, generally speaking, the human population, aside um, aside from being flexible and adaptable, another thing is that we don't have a direct predator, meaning there's no organism here on Earth that actually see us as their food. The only time that these organisms are very um, violent or aggressive towards us, it's only when we actually put them in a very risky position. That's the only time that they actually attack humans. But if they have a chance to really avoid us humans, because they see us as a threat rather than a food. So, kanang mga movies ng mga sharks or jaw, that's of course an exaggerated version of the behavior sa mga organisms in the wild. But generally speaking, humans, to be specific, is actually vulnerable only to extinction because of our own doing, or because of our health and so on. But in terms of the food pyramid, we don't have our um, direct predator, but that's a different story for other organisms. So example, here we have a tiger. Now this a tiger does not have a predator, and it actually hunts. It can hunt either the primary or the secondary consumers. Now we have here fixed migratory patterns. Now, probably you've heard of migratory birds or the migration of whales from cold seas to or cold oceans to warmer oceans for breeding, for food, and so on. So, or probably you another common example of migratory is your salmon. Are you familiar with that? Salmon are saltwater fish. But when it's the time for them to produce their youngs, they go back to the fresh water where they were born. So to produce new members. But of course, you've probably seen that or kaning mga turtles, 'di ba? Mga sea turtles, they actually lay their eggs on specific islands where they are born, and they actually leave their youngs and they don't come back to that island only when pag manganak na pod sila or they will lay their eggs. So these are migratory patterns. So it has been debated multiple times um what really um what's the basis for these animals, why they do these behavior or why they follow this certain migratory pattern. So one possibility is that they actually are very sensitive to the changing of season. So you probably seen um it's for organism, it's ideal for them to lay or give birth during summer or spring and summer season. That's because it's enough time. It's the season, the ideal season wherein food supply is available and more or less it's warm. So the young individual is or will survive. But because of global warming, this pattern has been shifted. Some organisms were not able to notice this change or adapt to this change in the global climate, wherein some organisms they failed to adapt, and therefore some of them they gave birth to their youngs either too early or too late. So that means the youngs have lesser chance of survival. Okay? So that's unfortunate. And sometimes if you're familiar with katong whale sharks sa Cebu, so 'di ba dapat they are migratory birds, migratory whales. They should not stay in the Philippines. But because naamay gabahog sa ilaha, have you seen that sa mga mga travel videos? They are forced to stay in that area because the food is there. So they are trained that they will stay there instead of migrating to another place, which is actually what's supposed to happen. So because they stay in that area, the the krill or the other food supply na waiting for them on the other parts of the globe is of course walay shy predator because they are staying in the area there wherein they will should only stay for a period of time. So naagid siya a cause and effect. Naagid siya domino effect whenever there is an intervention, human intervention sa mga behaviors sa mga animals. So here, that's an example that what I was talking about. Another is rarity. So some species are considered rare compared to other organisms. So probably that's already very understandable that when an organism is rare, therefore they have a small number in terms of their members. Okay, so here is an example of the Philippine crocodile, which is now considered rare in the wild. And then, of course, this is a sad reality when an organism has a high commercial value. Sometimes some organisms are poached, harvested, killed because of their either parts or are their covering or the nutritional value that is of course um, present in their body and so on. So are used as food, medicine, cosmetics, and so on. So of course, if they are poached or harvested more than more than we actually need. So I believe I mentioned this yesterday. So regarding the tigers. And here is an example of your um, the elephant tusks. So the elephant tusk is actually made of ivory. And ivory is actually used for mga decoratives, and especially on when have you seen the white part of a piano? That's actually made up of ivory. That's why a piano is expensive, because the material here, the specifically ivory, is actually generally kanang illegally procured or harvested from the wild. Another example, are you familiar with the shark's fin soup? That's actually a delicacy sa China, wherein they catch a shark, then they remove the fin, and then after removing the fin, they will throw that back to the sea. But we will think, dili man na teacher, it's okay because it's only a fin. Actually, they are actually considered kanang killed, kanang they are already destined to die because of the removal of their fin, because their fin is actually necessary for them to float. So if ma-remove ang fin, kaning dorsal fin man na siya sa snake, sa shark, they will actually sink to the bottom of the sea. So it's considered na they are already destined to die. So gamay lang ang imong gikuha na part sa shark, but you are actually killing the entire organism. Same thing with the elephant. Sure, they only get the tusk, but take note, the tusk is designed to protect them from their predator. So imagine that na ikaw as a human gikuha tanan imong ngipon. So 'di ba? Di ka, it's not your life is no longer enjoyable because it's part of your kanang functioning. So for us, it's not a problem, but for the animals, it is a problem for their survival because, again, it's for their protection. And lastly, we have here large territories. So, organisms, especially aggressive or carnivorous organism, they tend to have their own territory. And they must protect the territory so that they can control the resources, at the same time provide protection for the members of the population. But sometimes when organisms overlap their territory, that will can actually cause conflict or sometimes violence. So special, it's actually also true with humans. Probably you've heard it has been a while. There's sorry, violence between or between Ukraine and Russia. So they are, of course, fighting in the context that they are fighting because of the territory, their political, and so on. So more or less, it's the same with animals. They clash because of their territory. Now, so what we will do is we are asked to, since we are primarily the contributor to these extinction, it is now our time to help prevent this extinction. So, I will ask you to watch this video on your own. This is a documentary. Probably you're familiar with this person. He is one of the most famous um, presenter of documentary films. Attenborough. I'm not sure of his name, but he is a very familiar person. So, in relation to that, this is now wherein we have our PT or performance task, wherein you have the poster making. Okay. So please take note, this is actually found on page 6 of our module. So the module was already available last Saturday. I hope you were able to download your own copy. Under that page, you will find the guidelines, the details regarding the biodiversity conservation poster that you are, of course, expected to create on your own. Right? So our PT is very simple. Unlike sa other na mga performance tasks with other subject areas wherein it is integrated, ours is, of course, done specifically only for Science B. But it doesn't mean that since it's simple, of course, I'm expecting quality of work as well. So please take note that I have already uploaded the guidelines, the PDF version of the guidelines that's actually the same from the module. Okay, and then at the same time, that entry is actually the portal for your submission. Okay, again, that's also the portal for your submission. So take note, the poster is actually due until April 9. That's Saturday 5 p.m. Teacher nga no, Saturday 5 p.m. Take note, on April 7, that's our session 4. That's a dedicated session for you to really make your poster. All right? So meaning we are giving away one session, okay? So that you can create or perform or make your poster. And then of course, you are expected to do that during that period, and you are given 8, that's Friday, and until 9 to submit and upload your work. Any questions regarding the PT so far? Again, let me repeat. The details for our PT is found on page 11. Sorry, page 6 of our module. Page 6 of our module. So please read the details, the guidelines for our performance task. And then on April 7, the portal for the guidelines, at the same time the submission is will be active on April 7, 1 p.m., and will stay open and accommodate your submission until April 9, 5 p.m. Okay, so before we end our session, heads up everyone. Congratulations, we have now successfully finished our second and final module for the fourth quarter. So please take note, your knowledge will now be put to the test tomorrow during our long test number 2. So what are the topics included? We have biodiversity, extinction. We also have the HEPCO, if you remember, habitat, destruction, invasive species, pollution, overexploitation, sa pa, pollution, HEPCO, pollution, and so on. Basta, we have ko. And then we have also the factors that I mentioned, both the natural and human factors that affect our biodiversity. Okay, any questions, concerns? Yes. It seems that it has been very, very fast. The days are now, we're now simply counting down the days, and it seems that time is moving very, very fast, right? Next week is already Holy Week, right? And that means we only meet until Wednesday. And after next week, exam week na dayon. And of course, you will no longer join the online class starting April 20, 'di ba? Because 18 and 19 lang ang exam. And after that, April 20, freedom. But of course, that's freedom for you, students, not freedom for us teachers, because of course, there are still other activities or the year-end activities. So enjoy na pag 20. That's why what I want you to yeah, of course. What I want you to really bear in mind is that yes, it will be challenging, it will be difficult, but after April 20, freedom! Mag-swimsuit na dayon si kuan. Kinsa may mag-swimsuit dere. Kuan, glow up. Unsa na, prayer reveal ba lang tawagan na, prayer reveal. Ikaw ba ang aking prayer reveal? Of farewell ay, okay, here according to Miles Research Defense. Actually, Miles, after that you will experience a very euphoric feeling na pag after sa defense, and your teacher will say your kuan is approved, ano na, dali na kay na, it's a very rewarding feeling, di ba? Okay, farewell party. So unsay farewell party katud ang suoton sa um class picture ng mga sa tong mga thug bang tawag adto? So, mafia, mafia. Ay, mafia boss, meet up sa daw sa Kugon na dili man kay mga RK man mo. So, your looks doesn't fit on that area. Dili siya mag-stand out mo kay mga RK man mo. So kamo na nooy kawatan sa Kugon kay nag-stand out inyong mga face na puti kaayo, tiyadag mga skin. So, alright? So, are there concerns? Okay? So, regarding sa farewell, it's up to you guys. I will not impose it to you so that you don't feel pressured because I know you are already experiencing a lot of pressure. Okay? Okay, yes. If mag-party, if that's what you want, go. I will not kanang hinder or stop you from doing that. Okay? But of course, probably it's not the top of your priority right now. Sige. So, are there questions, concerns? 9H? So please take note, our long test will be tomorrow, 4:10 in the afternoon. So hopefully we'll not encounter any problems or lags. And hopefully the weather will cooperate. All right. Thank you, Isa, for confirming that you don't have any concerns anymore. So if that's the case, I will leave now the Google Meet because I'm only using data. I'm really conserving. All right. Okay. It's up to you again. Uy, basin ako ang mahimong inyong sana babysitter ha. My God. Okay. Sige, sige. Bye-bye. Take care everyone and stay safe and stay healthy. God bless everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Che.
Bye, sir. Thank you.